You may remember this as well if you're a boomer, Gen Xer, millennial. A few times a year on either NBC or ABC, they would have a blooper show. And all your favorite shows, all the outtakes, they would have an episode showing you some of the funny things that took place behind the scenes. Yeah, I didn't leave it in for that last episode, but I thought, you know what? Let's start off with a blooper. Because sometimes life hands us a blooper. Welcome in, everyone. Again, thank you to all the support. Thank you to all the comments, all the likes, the sharing out of the video. Really encourages me to keep on going and put these episodes together. And if you're tuning in for the first time, welcome to a new channel here. This is episode number 5. You may want to get a little bit of the backstory, may want to go back and watch some of the previous episodes, especially episode 1. I think episode 1 is kind of important to kind of get some context of who I am and why I decided to put this channel together. But you guys, again, have been amazing. The community is amazing, and I hope more and more people will come to the videos. Let's get to some of the viewer comments from the last episode. One comment was from my son, not in the actual YouTube channel, but he came to me and said, "Dad, can I give you some constructive criticism?" Because he watched one of the episodes. And I said, "Yeah, go ahead." He said, "You know what? They're really good. You're articulate. You have your thoughts well designed and put together, but you talk a little slow." Oh, okay, son. Thank you for that. We'll keep that in mind. I said, "Well, sometimes you got to allow people some time to process the information that you're giving them. And by the way, son, you do realize on YouTube, you can advance the speed 2 times or 3 times faster. So you can put it to a setting where it does appear that I am talking quicker. Maybe I'll do that every once in a while, halfway through the episode, for those of you that do put me on 2 or 2.5 times speed, just to mess you up. I'll go, "Hey, how you doing out there in Alberta? Let's keep on rolling with the referendum talk." And you'd be like, "Whoa," because if that goes 2 or 3 times the speed, you may think there's some sort of tech issue. Let's get to the official viewer comments. Thank you. I always enjoy reading through the comments. Maybe I should rename this YouTube channel The Cuban Lunch. The Cuban Lunch with Glenn, because there were a few chocolate bar references. So, hey, I know some of you have mentioned enough with the chocolate bar talk, but as long as there are comments, I'm going to keep on rolling. Like I did with my students, I would mention that my favorite chocolate bar was a coffee crisp. And every once in a while on my desk, there would be a coffee crisp, and I would smile. So maybe if we ever meet up in real life, if you recognize me in a grocery store or Walmart or a superstore or a Costco, maybe you'll come up and you'll say, "Glenn, here's a Cuban lunch on me." First one is from Ian. Ian says, "I'm a boomer, wanted this done 46 years ago under the first Trudeau. And yes, green licorice. I do remember that. Baby Ruths, Cuban lunches, and 10-cent chips." Yeah, you could get a bag of chips for 10 cents. I know it's not the favorite of a lot of you, but I like myself some ketchup or salt and vinegar. Johnny Alberta weighs back in. Thank you again, Johnny, for leaving another comment. "Excellent work, Glenn. Thanks for this great idea to cover both sides of the issue in upcoming episodes. People need an honest assessment of the pros and cons of both. P.S. I didn't like cherry blossoms either." Yeah. Well, I do agree with your comment, obviously, because I want this channel to look at both sides of the Alberta referendum. And some of you did leave comments that were not really criticism, but opposing views of some of the points I made in the last video. And I do love that. I do love to see. There were long comments from some of you. If any of you have gone back and read through the comments, those that have opposed a referendum about independence tend to leave longer comments. They have a lot more to say. But again, I enjoy reading through those. And as I mentioned, I am going to do a couple episodes next week regarding the opposite talking points. Again, it is important to hear both sides. I don't want to just have a channel where it's all one-sided views. I think both sides need to be listened to. And Melva Baker 965 says, chocolate bars. A local Camrose girl reacted that the Cuban Lunch and the rum and butter, oh, I didn't even mention that one, are available in grocery stores. And cherry blossoms can be bought at the dollar store. to be quite honest, that's probably where they should be sold. They taste so bad. They should be at the local discount store. Gotta love Camrose. Well, thank you so much, Melve Baker, for the comment. All right, let's move on. Another comment here from Jim Roy. Daniel Smith, our premier, for those that may be outside of Alberta or Canada, needs to have only one question on the referendum: Alberta independence only. If not, this could be very damaging to the Conservative Party. Well, a couple things there, Jim. I do agree. Let's not muddle it up. This is the biggest talking point in Alberta right now. All those other questions that Daniel put forward, they can come at a later time. They are not things on the lips of everyday Albertans right now. This one is. Let's not confuse things. Let's have a referendum with just this one question. And again, that is an issue that is for a future episode about Danielle Smith. As far as the independence referendum, I want to thank one of the comments. That's why I love reading the comments, because there was a comment that said independence, not separation. And I thought about that for a while, and I said, yeah, it should be referred to as an independence referendum, not a separatist or separation referendum. So thank you for that comment. I think separation has a lot more negative tone to it, and I don't want to have a lot of negativity on this channel. I mean, I like to have both sides. I am at this point in favor of a referendum at this point. I think we should have a referendum because it is such an issue right now in Alberta. But separation, yeah, seems to be a little bit more negative. Do you guys feel that way as well? Whereas independence has a little bit more positive tone. And maybe it's because the opposing side to the referendum uses that word. They're separatists. They just want a separation. And maybe it leads to that negative thought. Just like, the opposing side, not everyone, but some of the opposing side use the word traitor. Those traitors. So if they're constantly using traitor, separation, they kind of go in hand. And I like that word independence. And you're right, whoever left that comment. We should be referring to it as an independence referendum. Stay Free Alberta and the Prosperity Project, they use the word independent. All right, next up, Thread Fast. Gen Xer here, canvassing for Central Alberta. Well, thank you for your continued support and service of this referendum. I've interacted with hundreds of Albertans. There we go. I'm not cutting this one out either. An observation is that most vitriol comes from seniors, the boomers. Under 30s are participating. Gen Xers are generally in support of independence. I'm feeling positive that we'll see the question in a referendum, but cautiously optimistic that we'll ever see an independent Alberta. That's kind of where I'm at. That's why I wanted to include this comment. I completely agree with every word you put there, because I do think we'll see a question. There's just too many signatures right now. I don't think it can be stopped. And I think we should have a referendum. Cautiously optimistic. I may be a little bit more than cautiously. I am optimistic that at some point we will have an independent Alberta. Now, of course, if things change in Canada, if our federal government changes in Canada, if the rhetoric and the divisiveness changes, then maybe we don't have to be independent. I'm still in favor of it, but there needs to be some major changes to how Alberta and the West are not only just perceived, but how they can play a bigger role in the Federation. All right, Soft Whisper. And Soft Whisper, thank you so much for the comments. I feel like you're my co-host because I think I've featured one of your comments almost every show. So my co-host says, great podcast, Glenn. Thanks for your work and contribution. In my extended family, I brought up the independence movement to them, and although I met resistance, I know that they have not educated themselves. Maybe because they don't want to be proven wrong, or that they are closed-minded and set in their ways. Possibly both. I'm trying to figure out how I'll be able to bring them to understand and learn. I think it may be based on my slipping in comments here and there without pushing or having a heavy discussion. That, Soft Whisper, that is the key. That is the key. If we want to convince or make people think a little bit more about independence, we can't go at it in an attacking, aggressive manner. I've said this before. You need to go in with intelligent facts. You need to go in soft-spoken. You need to go in without trying to create a kerfuffle. Yes, debates can get heated, but a lot of people on either side, they're set in their ways, and that fight or flight kicks in. And often it's fight from the opposing side. Sometimes it's flight. They just don't want to hear it. I mentioned this on the last episode. I don't want to hear it, la, 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 especially if you're aggressive and trying to give too much information. You know, you go through 20 facts in 40 seconds, which my son might like because he thinks I should talk faster. But most people do not want to be bombarded with fact after fact after fact. That's why I'm breaking up the top 10 reasons into 2 videos. Maybe if you have someone that you think might benefit and might see your side a little bit better, maybe send them the link to these videos. Thank you so much, Soft Whisper, for the comment. And one more, please indulge me. It's a little bit longer, but this one almost seriously made me brought tears to my eyes because it's, again, what I think of when I think of the past in Alberta and in Canada. So this one comes from Breakaway, Alberta. I'm going to take myself off screen so maybe you can see it a little bit more. And Breakaway says, lived on 4th Street Southeast. So you were just like a block over from me in Medicine Hat. I was there in the 70s. So we might have even hung out or went to the same school. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, how often, what a world. How often do you meet someone that lived like a block away from you? I believe we were close to the downtown core as well, like within walking distance. Anyway, but here's what broke my heart. I take walks at night for fresh air or to grab something at the store. When we were 8 to 16 years old, kids in the 80s, that park would be an absolute wonderland. Our imagination would have turned it into a battlefield, a spy game, hide and seek. Dozens of neighborhood kids would be in there, especially in the summer holidays. You'd stay out until sundown, bikes and walkie-talkies, and no end of things we'd invent. And that brings back a childhood. I experienced a lot of those exact same things, riding my bike, playing street hockey, using my imagination. And then Breakaway Alberta says, I'm going to say around 2010, but I realized that that I realized there wasn't a kid in that park ever. Gorgeous, balmy August nights, not one kid, not a teenager, never saw bikes or anything. And then the bottom part says, the kids will never know that. They will simply never know what that was. The creativity, the fun, the way we grew up in 10-hour-long adventures around the parks and trees. They'll never know what that was. I wish they could. Extremely well said. And it's comments like this that I think a lot of us can share and can remember. And we do we're never going to get back to that point. Times have just changed too much with technology, with a busy lifestyle that a lot of people live. We're never going to get back to that exact point, but we can get back to parts of it. We can get back to feeling our kids are safe. We can get back to encouraging our kids to maybe go outside more and play with their friends and go to the park and ride their bike. We can try to push that a little bit. So thank you so much, Breakaway. That comment really, really hit home because that's the childhood I remembered. Last episode, we went through the first 5 of the top 5 reasons supporting Alberta independence. Today, I want to continue that on, going through the second set of 5 points. And again, please leave your comments either opposing or in favor of these 5 comments. I think it's important that we have this conversation, this discussion. One of my main goals is to share this message out, share these points out. As I mentioned, a lot of people are kind of teeter-tottering. They don't know which way to go. Let's get to point number 6. Pipeline delays have limited export capacity. Again, I'm just going to go through some facts without giving too much of my personal opinion. I'm going to leave that to you guys. You guys in the chat, you can leave your opinions about each of these. The argument is that federal policy and political opposition have slowed pipeline development. We've seen that with pipelines being delayed or pipelines being canceled. Major projects like the Northern Gateway Pipeline, the Energy East Pipeline were canceled after regulatory or political challenges, whether it's our policies or whether it was policies regarding the Democratic government down in the US. Delays, cancellations, hurting our economy. Canada's main export pipeline expansion, Trans Mountain Expansion Project, has cost more than $30 billion, several times its original estimate, many times because of the bureaucracy, because of the red tape, because of the delays. It adds to the cost. And let's face it, many times things go over budget. You want to build a house? Here's your initial cost. 8 months later, it costs more than originally was estimated. And the third statistic, for years, limited pipeline capacity forced Canadian oil to sell at discounts of $10 to $20 per barrel compared with the US benchmarks. Again, limiting our potential economic development, limiting the amount of money coming into the province or into the country. Bureaucracy can sometimes cause a lot of damage to an economy. A couple of visuals here. Again, I'll put them on full screen. I like both of these that I found. Fastest way to Alberta. The fastest way Alberta can build a pipeline to the Pacific is with independence. Now, some may disagree with that because British Columbia would still have to buy onto it. Of course, we can't build without British Columbia's support. However, we can go, and I think the easiest and most obvious direction is to go south and go southwest, as you see on the right-hand map here. Go through some of those northern U.S. states. I'm sure, especially under the current government, they would be on board with that, and build pipelines there and head out to the Asian markets. So yes, it would be very difficult to go Western Canada, Eastern Canada, but going through the U.S., that might be a fast track route. Talking point number 7 for Alberta separation. Alberta's economy is large enough to be its own country. Do you agree with that? Could we support ourselves? Alberta's economy is comparable to many independent nations around the world. Some examples: our GDP, again, roughly about $450 to $500 billion. A lot. That would rank us in the top 30, and similar to countries like Finland or Portugal. They seem to be doing fine. Alberta's population of about 4.7 million is comparable to countries such as New Zealand. So if the talking point is, well, we just don't have enough people in our country, there are a lot of countries with small populations that do extremely well. Again, Norway, another example. Alberta exports over 150 billion in goods annually, and mostly energy. So I don't think it's a matter of not having anything to sell. We are resource rich, mainly in oil and gas, but other areas as well. We can make a few bucks. In terms of some visuals, just a couple simple ones here. Our economy compared to other economies across the world. You see that all the red countries have smaller economies than Alberta. The blue countries have equal or larger economies. Looks like maybe 50-50. I think we do just fine. I think we could support ourselves. I think we could find trade partners. And the second visual, Alberta has the numbers and the resources to leave Canada. Larger population than 70 countries, bigger economy than 140 countries, more oil and gas than almost all of them. And just a talking point, another reason for Alberta independence. As I mentioned, if you have opposing views to this point, leave it in the comments, because I want to feature the opposing views in the next 2 episodes. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Please keep it point form, short. That's why I didn't feature some of them on the viewer comments today, because they were like, I had to scroll a little bit to read all of it. But if you keep it kind of short and sweet, then you may just see your opposition featured on the next video. Talking point number 8 in favor of independence. Alberta is one of the highest income levels in North America. Albertans are among the wealthiest populations in Canada. We have the highest median household income in the country. Our wages are typically 10 to 15% higher than the national average. The provincial historically in our province, lowest provincial taxes historically. Yes, they can spike sometimes, go up, go down, and no provincial sales tax. When I'm talking to friends outside of the country and they talk about taxes and state taxes or territory taxes, and I mention our province is the only province in Canada without a sales tax, at least without a stated sales tax. Whereas if you go to BC, you go to Ontario, go to Quebec, they have, 7, 8, 9, 10% additional provincial tax. They're quite shocked. How does your province get away with it? How come you don't have a provincial tax? So again, a great benefit of living in the province of Alberta and potentially a republic or an independent state. Strong resource revenues helped Alberta build the Alberta Heritage Savings and Trust Fund. Talked about that last episode. Yes, we're in debt right now. Alberta has a debt. Many of us have personal debts as well, credit card debts, mortgages, loans. But work hard enough as an independent state, work hard enough as an individual, get some breaks here and there, and you can overcome that debt. And I think Alberta can overcome that. It may take a few years, but with the right new government, with the right policies, with the right economic focus, I absolutely have no question, 100% in my opinion, we could overcome the debt that we have. Here you see the income by province, Alberta, the second last one over on the right-hand side. The average income's probably about $55,000, whereas the median is about just maybe over $40,000. Highest in Canada. And the second part here shows the Alberta weekly earnings compared to the other provinces. Weekly earnings. So in Alberta, the average weekly earnings are about $1.3 thousand a week. Comparable to Ontario and British Columbia. Once you start getting Newfoundland and making your way over to the right-hand side, the bars start to go down. So even in our current situation, wages are good. Better, I should say, better than the rest of Canada. And that's being handcuffed. That's being limited by legislation and policies that the government has passed on to Alberta. That's with the equalization payments, the taxes. So if you want to try and convince someone why we should be having an independence referendum, think about what it could be like if we didn't have those limitations. Next, Alberta's population is limited influence in federal elections. This is something that at the Stay Free Alberta town meetings brought up quite often. Alberta often votes differently from the federal government that forms power. Absolutely true. It's like two different countries. The West tends to vote one way, the East tends to vote another way. Alberta has 34 seats in the House of Commons, about 10% of the total. However, in previous elections, even though Alberta has dominated with conservative seats, scoring almost 100% of them in our province, Liberal government still forms the government. Since Stephen Harper, over 10 years now. Similar results have happened in the 2021 federal election and in the 2024 or 2025, I guess, federal election. Surveys often find 40-50% of Albertans believe their province is treated unfairly in Confederation. Some of you out there have been saying this for years and years. You must be sitting back now going, thank you, as you start to see more and more people realize what's going on, how the West is kind of pushed aside. The Liberal government doesn't need a single seat in Alberta. They don't need to even campaign out here. They don't need an Albertan seat, or possibly even a Saskatchewan seat, or British Columbia seat. They can focus on Ontario East. Here's your visuals. $34, $42, $14, $14. You put a line down the middle geographically. That's 76. That's 90. That's 104 seats, 107 seats, including the territories. Everything east of that line, 231 seats. Do you think the Liberal Party really cares about how the West votes? Do you really think they care about giving incentives to the Western provinces? Do you really think they care about making things equal, giving the West their fair share of say? And it's been like that for years and years. Ontario, 121 seats, Quebec, 78 seats. Ontario alone has more seats than out West. So if the Liberals can get, 70% of Ontario, 20% of Quebec, few of the areas in the Atlantic Canada, done deal. Just a matter of if it's going to be a majority or not. That may be the only thing that prevents the West from, or prevents the Liberals from getting majority, is the West. But even then, look what's going on. Just because you vote Conservative or NDP, it doesn't mean that your representative is going to stay with that party. That is a whole nother topic of discussion. When we look at the other branches of the government, we look at the Senate, judicial branch. Again, Western provinces, 24 seats total in the Senate. 24 seats each for Quebec and Ontario. Representation, just not there. And to make matters worse in terms of the Senate, for those that don't realize, we don't vote for senators. You may not get a Conservative senator. How do you become a senator? You're appointed by the Prime Minister. And you're appointed until a certain age. I believe it's 75, or until you step down. So you're pretty much there for life as long as you want to be. And for the last 10 years or so, the Liberals have appointed senators. And even though the West has 24, you really think all 24 are Conservative senators? Or do you think maybe there's a bunch of the odd Liberal representation out West that gets those Senate seats? And I don't know the numbers. I'd like to know if you guys know of the current 24 Western senators, how many are members of the Conservative Party? And then we can look also at the Supreme Court Justice. So judicial, sorry, I might have earlier misspoken and said that the Senate was judicial. No, of course, that's part of the legislative branch. A new judicial is coming up. So House of Commons, Senate, part of the legislative branch. And then part of the judicial branch is the Supreme Court, where you've got 9 Supreme Court justices, and they are supposed to be impartial, supposed to represent a completely different branch that has no obligations or no ties to political parties, but they're human. Of course they do. West gets 2, everything east, 7. 2, 7. And we don't vote for our Supreme Court. How do they get in? Oh, yeah. The Prime Minister appoints them. Do you think he knows their political affiliation, even though they're not supposed to really have one? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he probably does. What I'm really curious about is I read yesterday that the federal government has challenged It's challenged all the way up to the Supreme Court whether or not the Emergency Act was unlawful, unconstitutional. Let's see. Let's see what the Supreme Court says. I really, really hope they uphold the lower court's decision. That will be an extremely big telling sign. And the last talking point, before we get to that, yes, the West, like I said, many of you have been pushing years and years and years since the 70s, since Pierre Trudeau, pushing for independence and more say. We've been left out, we've been neglected. And so many political cartoons over the past have represented Western views. That Eastern Canada is milking the proverbial Albertan cow, reaping the benefits, while Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, British Columbia put in all the labor. And there's many cartoons like this from the past 40, 50 years. Final talking point, Alberta could design its own taxation and regulatory system. The argument, independence could allow Alberta to restructure taxes and economic policy, which the Alberta Prosperity Project, if you haven't read their report, goes into a lot of detail about how things would be different, could be different. Our lifestyles, because of this, could be different. How taxes could be lower. Encourage you to go and read that on the Alberta Prosperity Project website. Examples, Alberta currently has no provincial sales tax, mentioned that before. Resource royalties can generate 10 to 20 billion annually in strong energy markets. Alberta already controls most natural resource revenues under the Canadian Constitution. And if federal taxes collected in Alberta stay locally, supporters estimate tens of billions in additional government revenue every year. And as I mentioned on the last show, based on oil and gas alone, Alberta would be number 6, 7 in the world ranking by production. And we've got out of debt before. Not too long ago. Many of us remember this. Yes, it wasn't easy. Getting out of debt never is easy. Never is. You got to make some sacrifices, and Alberta would have to make some sacrifices. But it can be done. There you go. Top 10 talking points. Please, I encourage you. Constructive feedback, criticism if you're on the opposing view. I'll mention in the next 2 episodes, opposition, or in a debate, you give one side a chance to speak, then you give the other side a chance. Here's your chance. What have I got wrong? Why are these talking points? What are the flaws in these talking points? Government overreach, overall tax burden, federal income tax, federal corporate income tax, federal goods and services tax, capital gains tax, carbon tax, emission caps, plus our own provincial tax, the unemployment, the high cost of education, and property taxes. All those things come into play. And many of them were addressed in those top 10 talking points. That is going to do it for this episode. I will be back next week with a couple episodes presenting the counter arguments, some that I've looked up myself and some that I'll take from the community in the chat. All I ask is you be respectful and that you come at it from statistics, evidence, And please, again, keep them kind of short and to the point, makes it easier to go through them. Don't forget the petition signing, May the 2nd is when the petition signing runs out. Need at least 177,000 signatures for all of you that have signed the petition. Thank you. Please encourage your friends, your family, your coworkers to sign it, regardless of the side that they're on. Every single Albertan should want to sign this to have an opportunity to exercise their right to vote. This is not a signing for automatic independence. It's a signing to have Albertans make that decision. Check out the stayfreealberta.com website. You can see all the different locations where you can go sign the petition. Over 280, can you believe how it's grown? Over 280 signing locations. And in October and November, this is what we hope to see on the referendum. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be part of Canada to become an independent state? Go to your local guest speakers. If you are in Wainwright or around Wainwright today, March the 19th, when this episode goes out, the Prairie Rose Senior Activity Center will have a guest speaker at 7 o'clock. Also, they will be accepting petition signings throughout the day. If you're in the Vermilion area on March the 20th, 6 to 10 p.m. is the petition signing, 7 o'clock the guest speaker at the Senior Citizen Center. And if you are going to be around the Edmonton area on Saturday, March the 28th, petition signing from 1 to 9 p.m. with a guest speaker at 7 o'clock. Only 3 of the many locations that you can sign the petition. Go check out Stay Free Alberta. And I'm featuring a lot of small town Alberta in terms of the petition signing here. Many of you out there in small town Alberta. I'm going to close off the show with a song recognizing small town Alberta. My name is Glenn, and I am a proud Canadian and an even prouder Albertan. Keep sharing this out. Keep leaving the comments. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subs. You are amazing. We got this. We'll see you next episode.
Sunrise spills on a gravel road. Dust kicks up where the wild winds go. Canola fields of gold and a faded red barn. A world so big, but our small town goes so hard. The church bell rings like a worn out hymn. Oil fields hum and the day begins. The smell of rain and the scent of pine. This patch of earth will forever be mine. Small town thunder, hearts on fire, getting the crops in under the wire. Through the storms and the sky so blue, this Albertan town's got a soul, one of a kind and true. My honey's voice on the porch at night, supper's warm in the fading light. My old boots by the front door stand, a simple life shaped by calloused hands. Small town thunder, hearts on fire, getting the crops in The seasons turn, but the roots stay deep. Every hill and valley ours to keep. The sound of the past in the whispering pines. This Albertan town will always stand the test of time. Small town thunder, hearts on fire, getting the crops in under the wire. Through the storms and the sky so blue, this Albertan town's got a soul, one of a kind and true.
Thank you again for tuning in. This was the Alberta Referendum. Have a wonderful day.
Strong.